The perfume of leather and polished wood lingered in the air as the boy stepped into the boutique. His sneakers squeaked softly on the marble floor, his hoodie damp from the rain outside. Heads turned, not because he did anything wrong, but because he didn't look like he belonged. A wealthy woman with pearls around her neck clutched her handbag a little tighter. A salesman paused mid-fold with a cashmere scarf. And behind the counter, Lauren pressed her lips into a thin line as her eyes narrowed at the boy. She didn't ask if he needed help. She didn't smile. She simply reached below the counter, pulled out her phone, and whispered to the emergency dispatcher, "Yes, I think he's here to steal. He's tall, black, maybe 16, wearing a hoodie. Please hurry." But why did she call so quickly? Why not ask his name, what he was looking for? Why did fear arrive before fairness? Before facts? Elijah wasn't there to cause trouble. He stood quietly near the glass cases, eyes wide at the sparkle of Swiss watches and handcrafted cufflinks. He wasn't touching anything, just staring. Maybe dreaming, maybe remembering. His mother used to bring him here when he was younger. Always after hours, always quietly. "One day," she'd whisper as she held his tiny hand. "One day, all of this will be yours to take care of." But he hadn't been back since she left for a trip 6 months ago. He hadn't even told anyone he was coming. He just missed her, missed the warmth of her voice in that cold, glassy place. But now he was being watched, judged, misread. Lauren paced behind the counter, glancing at him every few seconds. She bit her nail nervously. She had worked at Gallery Noir for 5 years and prided herself on knowing who the right kind of customer was. And Elijah? He didn't fit that image. He didn't smile politely. He didn't walk with confidence. He just looked lost, suspicious. And what would her manager say if something went missing on her shift? What if she let her guard down and paid the price? The fear of losing her job, it made her suspicious. But was that fear an excuse? Or was it something deeper? Minutes passed. Elijah took a slow breath and walked up to the velvet-lined counter, pointing to a gold necklace with a single sapphire in the center. "That one," he said. His voice was soft, respectful. "It was my mom's favorite." Lauren raised an eyebrow. "That necklace? It's $10,000. She folded her arms. "Do you even know what store this is?" Her voice dripped with doubt. Elijah didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket, not for a wallet, not for cash, but for something far simpler. A folded letter. A note his mother wrote him months ago. He placed it gently on the counter. Lauren didn't open it. Her eyes were on the door, waiting. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. "They're almost here," she said coldly. "You might want to explain yourself quickly." But what explanation could he give that she would actually believe? What words carry enough weight to break a wall built by prejudice? And more importantly, what would she do when she discovered who he really was? Before we dive deeper into this journey, if you enjoy stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. The door burst open with urgency. 2 officers stepped in, hands resting near their holsters, eyes scanning. Lauren straightened immediately, a look of satisfaction on her face as if justice had just walked through the door. She pointed to Elijah. "That's him," she said quickly. "He's been lurking around, acting suspicious. He says he wants to buy a necklace, but he doesn't belong here." Elijah turned slowly, confused, heart pounding. "I didn't do anything," he said. "I was just looking." One of the officers approached him cautiously. "Son, we got a call. Mind showing us some ID?" Elijah hesitated. He had left his wallet at home. All he had was the letter in his hand, now trembling slightly. I just came to remember her," he said softly. "My mom." Lauren rolled her eyes. "That's what they always say," she muttered under her breath, arms crossed. "They come in, play the sympathy card, and then something disappears." The officers didn't respond, but something in Elijah's tone, his posture, made one of them pause. Officer Ramirez, the older of the two, looked around the boutique. "You said he threatened you?" he asked Lauren. "Or tried to take something?" She blinked. "Well, not exactly, but he was loitering. He looked out of place. I didn't feel safe." "Did he touch anything?" "No." "Did he raise his voice?" "No, but..." "Ma'am," Ramirez interrupted. Calling the police on someone for being present in a public store without cause, you understand that's a serious accusation, right? She scoffed. Look, I've worked here long enough to know when someone's up to no good. But Ramirez's attention had already shifted. He turned back to Elijah, whose fingers still clutched the letter. What's that you've got? Elijah looked down. A letter from my mom. She used to bring me here. Said this place would be important one day. I miss her. I thought maybe being here would make me feel close to her again. Something cracked in Ramirez's face. A small, invisible fracture. What's your mother's name? He asked gently. Elijah hesitated. Natalie Brooks. The name hit the room like a silent explosion. Lauren froze. Her face went pale. What did you say? She asked. Elijah glanced at her. Natalie Brooks. She's my mom. Lauren's voice trembled. Natalie Brooks, as in Madame Brooks? The owner of Gallery Noir? Elijah nodded slowly. Yes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lauren's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her eyes darted to the officers, then back to Elijah. But that's impossible. She's a millionaire. She's on magazine covers. She owns boutiques in 3 countries. She's white. No, she's not, Elijah said calmly. She's black. Light-skinned like my grandfather. But she's definitely black. She just doesn't talk about it much. Said the world treated her better when they assumed. But she never hid it from me. The walls around Lauren's assumptions collapsed like glass. Everything she thought she knew about who belongs and who doesn't shattered. The boy she feared was the heir. The son of the woman who signed her paycheck. The one she had just called the police on. Officer Ramirez stepped back. I think we're done here, he said firmly. He gave Elijah a respectful nod. Sorry for the trouble, son. Elijah nodded, still quiet, eyes cast down. As they left, Lauren reached out slightly. Wait, I didn't know. I didn't mean, her voice broke off. But what did she mean? That she didn't know he was rich? That she didn't mean to call the police on someone who might own the building? But what if he hadn't been Natalie Brooks' son? Would she have still meant it? And now, with everything out in the open, the real question lingered in the air. Would an apology ever be enough? The very next morning, the boutique was quiet, eerily so. Lauren stood behind the counter, her hands folded tightly, her nerves fraying with every tick of the wall clock. She hadn't slept the night before. The scene kept playing in her mind. Elijah's calm voice, the officer's disapproval. The moment the name Natalie Brooks left his lips like a verdict. Every part of her body screamed regret, but none of it was loud enough to drown out the shame. And now word had spread. A silent storm was building. She could feel it, hear it in the awkward glances from coworkers, in the way customers passed her without a smile, in a sudden email from the regional director. Ms. Brooks is flying in today. Be available. That was it. No explanation. Just wait. At precisely 11 o'clock, the boutique's glass doors opened with a soft chime. A tall woman stepped inside, her presence commanding, elegant, composed. Natalie Brooks didn't need an entourage. Her reputation walked in before her, and her silence was louder than any announcement. She wore a cream-colored coat that swept the floor, gold earrings that shimmered without showing off, and eyes that could freeze a room without raising her voice. Lauren straightened immediately. Ms. Brooks, she said breathlessly. But Natalie held up a single hand, just enough to stop the excuses from forming. I'm not here to hear what you have to say, Lauren, Natalie said, her tone measured, refined, like a violin string pulled just tight enough. I'm here because I flew overnight to speak with my son, after he called me in tears. The words landed with precision. Lauren's eyes widened. I didn't know it was him. I swear, if I had known. Natalie's gaze sharpened. That's exactly the problem. You didn't know, and yet you felt entitled to judge, to accuse, to humiliate. Not because of what he did, but because of how he looked. She took a step closer. Tell me, Lauren, would you have called the police if he had blonde hair? Blue eyes? If he had walked in wearing loafers instead of sneakers? Lauren stammered. I just felt uneasy. He didn't look like our usual clientele. Natalie let out a slow breath. Our usual clientele? Her voice didn't rise, but the chill in it made Lauren flinch. Do you mean wealthy? Or do you mean white? The silence between them stretched like a wire ready to snap. Customers in the store began to pause, pretending to browse while listening intently. Natalie glanced around, then turned back to Lauren. My son was here because he missed me. Because this boutique, my boutique, was one of the few places he felt close to me. And now it's become a memory tainted by fear and humiliation. Lauren's throat tightened. Please, Ms. Brooks. I never intended to offend you, but you did, Natalie interrupted, her voice still composed. And not just me. You offended every customer who ever felt like they had to prove they belonged. Every employee who knows what it's like to walk into a room and feel unseen. You didn't just fail as a salesperson. You failed as a human being. Lauren looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. Is there anything I can do to make this right? She asked. Natalie was silent for a moment. Then she said softly, that depends. Are you asking because you fear for your job, or because you finally understand? The question hung heavy in the air, and Lauren couldn't answer it. Not yet. But what would happen now? Would Natalie fire her on the spot, or offer her a chance to grow? And more importantly, would Lauren even deserve that chance? Natalie stepped back, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor as she folded her arms. The weight of generations etched across her face. You know, she said, her voice gentler now, but still charged with meaning. I built this boutique from nothing. Not from inherited money, not from marriage, from grit, from long nights balancing ledgers and mornings pretending I wasn't exhausted. And through it all, I had to be twice as composed, twice as sharp, just to be seen as equal in rooms filled with men who thought I was the assistant. Or worse. Lauren remained still, her face now pale and blank, like someone witnessing the quiet crumbling of their own image in a mirror. I hired people, Natalie continued, not just for their skills, but for their heart, for their ability to reflect this brand's values. Grace, inclusion, sophistication, not suspicion. Lauren's voice came out in a whisper. I really thought I was doing the right thing. Natalie's brow lifted ever so slightly. Then perhaps it's time you rethink what right looks like. The silence returned, but this time it felt different. Less like punishment, more like a chance. Elijah will be back this afternoon, Natalie said. And you will be here. You will apologize. Not because I asked you to, but because you owe it to him. Because you need to see what harm looks like when it's standing in front of you with nothing but a letter in his hand and a heart full of questions. Lauren nodded slowly. Yes, I will. But her voice trembled, not with fear of losing her job, but with a sudden realization that she had nearly erased a young man's dignity out of her own assumptions. Natalie's eyes softened slightly, just for a moment. And Lauren, she added, if you truly want to grow from this, start by unlearning what comfort taught you. Because comfort often hides the worst kind of bias, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't scream slurs or throw punches. The kind that smiles, nods, and dials 911. Outside, the clouds shifted, letting in a sliver of golden light through the storefront windows. It danced across the floor, the same floor where Elijah had stood quietly, heart in hand. Customers watched in stillness. The entire boutique had become a stage for something deeper than fashion. This was about legacy, identity, and the invisible currency of respect. Natalie turned and began to walk toward the back office, her coat flowing behind her like a banner of resolve. Lauren stood frozen for a beat, then exhaled, finally feeling the weight of what she'd done settle fully into her chest. Later that afternoon, Elijah returned. He entered hesitantly, his shoulders a little straighter than the day before. This time, the boutique did not recoil. Instead, it paused. Lauren stepped forward before he could say a word. Elijah, she began, her voice shaking. I owe you an apology. I judged you, not for your actions, but for your appearance, for your presence. I saw you and assumed the worst, and I am deeply sorry. Elijah looked at her, eyes unreadable. Would you have still apologized, he asked, if I wasn't her son? The question struck like a chord. Lauren didn't answer right away. She glanced at Natalie, who stood silently by the entrance, watching, waiting. Elijah added softly, because a lot of people treat me differently after they learn who my mother is. but I'm still the same person I was before. And that was the question now echoing across the room. Could Lauren see past the fortune and finally see the human in front of her? Lauren swallowed hard, her throat dry like parchment. Elijah's question hung in the air, echoing louder than any siren from the day before. Would you have still apologized if I wasn't her son? It wasn't a rhetorical question. It wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation, one Lauren knew she had no right to decline. She looked him in the eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see a hoodie. She didn't see a threat. She saw a young man who had walked into a place that should have felt like home and been treated like a trespasser. No, she whispered finally. I probably wouldn't have, and I hate that truth. Her honesty was raw, uncomfortable, and perhaps the first step. Elijah nodded slowly, not with approval, but with acknowledgement. He wasn't asking for perfection. He wasn't expecting redemption in a single sentence, but he was looking for sincerity, and that, at least, she had given him. Natalie watched from a few feet away, her arms still crossed, but her eyes softening. This wasn't just a test for Lauren. It was a mirror for everyone who had ever made a silent judgment and never been forced to answer for it. I'm not here to humiliate you, Elijah said calmly, but I do want you to remember this moment. Not because I'm the owner's son, but because anyone could have been in my shoes. Someone without a last name that protected them. The boutique was silent except for the hum of distant conversation. A woman browsing watches paused to listen, and in turn in the back office stopped typing. Something more powerful than policy was unfolding. Something human. You know, Elijah continued, when my mom used to bring me here late at night, I would run my fingers along the display cases and imagine what kind of man I'd have to become to earn respect in rooms like this. He glanced around. Turns out for some people, even that wouldn't be enough. He turned back to Lauren. But for others, maybe honesty is a start. Lauren felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time she didn't hide them. I promise to be better, she said. Not just here, everywhere. Natalie finally stepped forward. We don't grow when things are easy, she said, her voice resonating like a quiet command. We grow when we're uncomfortable, when we're forced to confront the stories we tell ourselves about who belongs and who doesn't. She looked at Elijah. And my son? He belongs everywhere his heart takes him, and he shouldn't need my name to make that true. She walked over to the same velvet-lined counter Elijah had stood at the day before. The sapphire necklace still shimmered in its case, untouched. She signaled for an associate. Wrap that, she said. Please. Lauren blinked, but he didn't buy it. Natalie smiled gently. He doesn't need to. It already belongs to them. The associate nodded, lifting the necklace from the display with reverent hands. Elijah looked stunned. Mom, I wasn't asking for, I know, she interrupted. But you came looking for a piece of me, and now I want you to carry it, with pride. The necklace was placed in a velvet box and handed to him. Elijah held it like a memory made solid. Around him, the air felt lighter, not just because of the gift, but because of the reckoning. A moment where a story could have ended in silence, but instead unfolded into something deeper. Healing, reckoning, reflection. But what would Elijah do with this moment now? Would he bury it or use it to shape the kind of man he once imagined becoming? That evening, after the store had closed and the city lights glimmered outside the boutique's tall glass windows, Elijah sat quietly in his mother's office. The walls were lined with black and white portraits of models and seamstresses, some famous, some forgotten. Natalie sat across from him, a cup of chamomile tea in her hand, her posture relaxed, but her eyes still watchful. You were brave today, she said softly. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't try to humiliate her. That takes strength most adults don't even have. Elijah gave a half smile. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. Like I've lived this scene before. Different store, different people, same judgment. Natalie reached across the desk, placing her hand gently over his. That's because you have. Too many times. And that's why this time had to be different. The necklace box sat between them unopened, a symbol of more than wealth. It was memory legacy, and a promise wrapped in velvet. I used to think, Elijah said slowly, that once people found out who I was, they'd treat me differently in a good way. But now I'm not so sure. Natalie leaned back, her eyes clouded with thought. They will, she said. but not always for the right reasons. Sometimes people respect the name more than the person. That's why you have to decide now who you want to be, with or without the Brooks fortune. Elijah looked out the window, watching the traffic below. "Do you ever wish you weren't rich?" he asked. She chuckled quietly. "Sometimes, when people assume I didn't work for it, when they think money erases my struggle. But no, I don't regret it, because it gave me something powerful, options. And that's what I want for you. Not just money, freedom. The kind that lets you walk into any room and never shrink yourself to fit it." Elijah nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I didn't want to be a symbol today," he said. "I just wanted to feel close to you." Natalie's eyes welled. "And you did, in more ways than you know." A soft knock came at the door. It was the regional manager, hesitant, careful. "Ms. Brooks," he said gently. "Just wanted to let you know, there's been quite a bit of press interest since this morning. Someone must have filmed part of it. It's making rounds online." Natalie sighed but smiled slightly. "Of course it is." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "So now I'm viral?" "Not you," she said. "The moment, the story. People are talking because they saw truth and pain and grace, all in the same frame." The manager added, "There's been an outpouring of support and also a lot of criticism directed at the boutique." Natalie stood. "We'll handle it," she said calmly. "We always do, not by hiding, but by leading." She turned to Elijah. "But now you have a decision. Do you want to stay behind the scenes or step into the light?" Elijah hesitated. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "I've been grooming someone to take over the brand, the soul of this business. And after today, I think that someone might be you." Elijah blinked. "Me? I don't know anything about running a luxury brand." Natalie nodded. "Yet, but you know what matters most, people. Their stories, their pain, their worth. And I can teach you the rest." He looked down at the necklace again. It sparkled softly in the lamplight, no longer just a memory, but maybe a beginning. But was he ready to carry the weight of a fortune built on elegance, while reshaping it into something more human? The next few weeks unfolded like scenes from a film Elijah never imagined himself starring in. Magazine interviews, invitations to speak at youth panels, brand meetings where executives twice his age leaned in when he spoke. But Elijah didn't let the sudden spotlight change his core. He showed up to every meeting in the same quiet way he had entered the boutique that day, observing, listening, asking the questions others avoided. He wasn't interested in becoming a face on a billboard or the new heir to some glossy empire. He wanted something deeper, to change the way people felt when they walked through those doors, not just in Gallery Noir, but everywhere. Because what good was a fortune if it couldn't rewrite the silent rules of belonging? Lauren remained at the boutique. Many had assumed she would be fired immediately, but Natalie had made a different choice, a harder one. She offered her a chance to stay under probation and attend a mandatory equity and inclusion training program funded by the company itself. Natalie faced backlash for that decision. Some said she was too lenient. Others said it was a PR stunt. But Elijah understood. True change didn't come from public takedowns. It came from quiet, persistent reflection. Lauren never tried to defend her actions again. Instead, she worked the floor in silence, treating every customer like a person, not a risk. Some customers stopped by just to see if she changed. Others avoided her. But day by day, she showed up, humbled, uncertain, but willing. One afternoon, she saw Elijah near the watch section, guiding a group of interns through product design decisions. Their laughter filled the boutique like music. When he passed by her, she paused. "Elijah," she said gently, "can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Of course." She hesitated, then said, "Why didn't you ask your mom to fire me?" Elijah looked at her for a long moment. "Because this story isn't about punishing people for who they were. It's about asking who they're willing to become." Lauren swallowed, stunned. "You could have ruined me." Elijah smiled faintly. "No, you did that part on your own. I just chose not to return the favor." Word of Elijah's role in reshaping the boutique began to spread. But more importantly, his story sparked conversations in other luxury brands, schools, even newsrooms. He became a quiet symbol, not of rebellion or revenge, but of restoration. Natalie watched it all with a sense of quiet pride. She hadn't created her empire so it could end with her. She had built it to outlive her, through him. On a rainy Friday evening, just as the boutique was closing, Elijah walked back to the same glass case where it all began. The velvet display now held a photo. Him and Natalie, arms around each other, smiling in the very spot where suspicion once reigned. Below the photo, a plaque read, "This boutique is for everyone who has ever been underestimated. You belong here." Elijah stood in front of it for a while, hands in his pockets, heart full. A young girl walked in with her father, looking wide-eyed at the sparkles around her. She tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, do you think I could ever work here one day?" Elijah turned to them with a warm smile. "Not just work here," he said. "You can run it." And as the doors closed behind them, he realized he hadn't just inherited a store. He had inherited a mission. But how many more lives could change if we stopped judging by what we see and started listening to who people are? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video, and tell us in the comments, what part of this journey moved you the most? There's another story waiting for you, and it might just change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.